My pull toward Mary Magdalene began at the beginning of the pandemic. I had enrolled in a several-week course on this Mary through the Action and Contemplation Center, Richard Rohr's organization. This course consisted of audio sessions with Cynthia Bourgeot. The decision to take the time to delve in a little deeper has changed my life. I felt an unexpected connection with Mary Magdalene. The excitement I felt in my heart each week that I went through these learning materials was something to pay attention to. It felt important to keep going and not try to figure it out. The community of several of us moving through this course at that time created an unexplainable excitement most of us could feel as this community communicated with each other during the course. I am part of a private Facebook group called the House of Mary Magdalene. This group of mostly women follow the teachings of author Megan Watterson, who wrote the amazing book Mary Magdalene Revealed. I highly recommend this book if you are at all curious and want to learn a bit more. In Richard Rohr's words, quote, "What we do know about Mary Magdalene is that she was the woman who was closest to Jesus. She was possessed by 7 demons, and Jesus healed her. She is mentioned in the resurrection accounts by name in all 4 Gospels. She was the first to meet the risen Christ. Mary Magdalene is the person in the Gospel who most needs love to be stronger than death, and so she is the first to know it, and perhaps at the deepest level. She is the first one who symbolically comes to consciousness, as it were, of Jesus as the risen Christ, and thus is the clear witness to the witnesses. She is the real knower. In fact, love and knowing have become one in her. Mary is the archetypal name for all those who have been led by love into awareness of their true selves and know its source. Mary Magdalene is the icon and archetype of love itself, needed, given, received, and passed on. She is a stand-in for all of us who seek an intimate and loving relationship with the divine. Jesus' appearance to her first and alone is the clear affirmation of the wonderful and astounding message that we do not need to be perfect to be the beloved of Jesus and God. End quote. In the spring of 2024, I felt a tug within my heart. Someone who was part of our private Facebook group had been offering Mary Magdalene pilgrimages in southern France for the past few years. Before I knew it, I was reaching out to get more information. Then not long after that, I put a deposit down at the encouragement of my husband, Kevin, to go ahead and do this. All details fell pretty smoothly into place. I am deeply grateful for the opportunity to have been able to take such a rare trip through the gift of an inheritance. This journey would require levels of trust that I had not yet experienced. I would be traveling alone for the first time to a foreign country. The renewed passport I had acquired a few years back before the pandemic was just waiting for me. As the pilgrimage approached, a quote from an unknown author made its way to my eyes and heart. Here's what it said. Quote, "I know you are scared, but go where you feel pulled. Listen to the desires of your soul, and listen like your life depends on it, because it truly does. You are here right now in this moment with a chance to live and grow and love." End quote. I started to experience big waves of fear and anxiety for 3 weeks prior to leaving. What in the world was happening to me? I realized I needed to be able to let go in ways I hadn't yet experienced. I began asking for the love of God and the red thread of Mary Magdalene to wrap itself around me and all of this situation and my feelings each time the fear and anxiety would reveal itself to me. I've been wearing a red thread on my left wrist for the last 2 years now. The red thread connected to Mary Magdalene, according to author Megan Watterson, is our reminder that we are all connected. It's a visual of the vow we have made to do the work that lets us release the ego and return to the heart. And it's a symbol of the spiritual teachings that are inborn to us, that pour out through us each time we dare to become a presence of love. In Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, the red thread is worn on the left wrist because it's considered the feminine side. It's the receiving side, allowing us to receive spirit. On September 6th, I walked onto the first of 3 planes to take me to the south of France. My final plane arrived at 11:30 a.m. the following day through 7 time zones. After arriving, we made our way to an Uber, which brought us to the Marseille train station for my first train ride abroad. I loved it, and this offered the opportunity to rest and have a bite to eat. So you want to do the image, the second image of the Mary Magdalene Church, please. Our first destination that weekend was 2 days in the Rennes-le-Château area, into St. Mary Magdalene Church here. If you are not familiar with the Cathars region of this, people of this region, I will say I was quickly captured by the history of their deep struggle, eventual persecution, and many who died for their unwavering faith in what was considered heretical. Many of these people carried within them a deep connection and devotion to Mary Magdalene. They also placed women in positions of leadership. They flourished in the 12th century and challenged the authority of the Catholic Church. I felt somehow that my heart was aching for what they had gone through, especially as we walked one of the areas where they had lived, worshiped, and ultimately died. We visited St. Mary Magdalene Church, where originally it was built around the 8th century. I was profoundly moved by this location near Spain, and I thought of the Cathars who lived there long ago. Next slide, please. On the way to the next location, we passed the upside-down mountain here called Bugarak. The mountain itself is a geological anomaly, since its top layers are millions of years older than its bottom ones, making it an upside-down mountain. This area is shrouded in mystery and myth, and seemed to have drawn people toward it for centuries. It was quite a sight and felt magical. Next slide, please. As we made our way, we found ourselves on a narrow road, slowly winding up this mountain. Quite a challenge when a car would come toward you from the opposite direction. The views were absolutely breathtaking, and the sunlight would beautifully make its way through the mountains near each other. I was mesmerized by the sight. We eventually made it to the Hermitage and Chapel in the Langue de Roussillon area in the Pyrenees, built in 1782. Next slide, please. As I walked into this sacred hidden space here within the mountain, I was immediately brought to tears. I didn't need to know why, I just let it happen. This is a nature worship space with no ceiling, with just the light of the sky. Somehow, a portion of the struggle of these people could still be felt there. I also felt such a loving, beautiful presence surrounding me. My heart wanted to stay here for as long as I could. After lingering in this chapel for a while, I made my way toward a bell high above our heads. As I rang it, it had the softest sound of a large bell I've ever heard. It was comforting and peaceful. This gentle tone touched my heart and felt as if it made its way far into the mountains. Among the mystery of Rennes-le-Château is the possibility that Mary Magdalene is buried there somewhere. We then made our way to the Fountain of Love in Rennes-le-Spain, where I baptized myself. I felt the strong nudge to make sure to do this while on the pilgrimage, to offer myself completely to God in this sacred place, to invite in a new beginning. It was one of the most beautiful spaces I've seen and meaningful experiences I've had. The next slide, please. When we arrived on a Sunday, there was a family there and some others. Initially, we were a little disappointed, but we realized that it was the weekend after all. Legend says that Mary had baptized others just downstream from the area I had chosen for my baptism. I made the decision to go ahead. It was chilly, and I had my bathing suit on under my clothes and was ready to do this. We placed a blanket down, and because it was slippery with possibly deep water, I made the decision to sit on a large rock, and when I was ready, to place my feet in the water. It was time to invite in the sacred presence of God and offer myself for the baptism. It truly was a beautiful, holy moment. I could feel something different in the air. I brought a copper heart rock with me as my symbol for this special moment. I wanted complete control of my baptism as an adult. I felt held and supported by God. Next slide, please. And this is the video of the baptism. Before the baptism, there were two friendly women who spoke to us on their way in and had arrived not long after us. These women made a bold decision. Near a waterfall behind me, these women were representing their freedom, as I have learned through research which others have done in this space. Those two ladies took every piece of clothing off and jumped in that cold water. They were free. It was a clear message to all of us to move our way to whatever living freely is for each of us. None of us were uncomfortable with this living freely choice that we were witnessing. Not too long after all of this unfolded, out from the side of a rock near the waterfall, a woman appeared with a large rainbow-colored gong. It was a beautiful surprise as she blessed the water and all of us. It all felt surreal and holy. Words cannot adequately describe how I felt between the power of the baptism and the gong blessing. It was a very special moment that I will cherish for the rest of my life. Next video, please. I'd like to share the words of author Megan Watterson on baptizing oneself. Quote, baptism is a ritual to release what used to be, to start again. There's baptism by fire, by water, by a constant stream of words that bless just from hearing them. It's a chance to draw that line in the sand, to start over, to stop looking back, to live into what's next, what's new, to call back all that power I've given away, bit by bit, most of my life. The power that makes certain I write that sentence that's coiled at the base of my spine. I kiss that reaches through to the soul. The power that love inspires, breaking the spell of what's expected. The power that reminds us we can take up space. We can know our own worth. We can be as brilliant as we really are and never spend our energy ever again on hiding it. We can reclaim all that power we've siphoned away to others right now and live instead from the authority that can only come from within. We don't have to be someone else's. It has always been enough to be our own. We can know how important we are, how our one life constellates a universe of potential. End quote. Our next stop was to the town of Saint-Baume, which is where we would be for the next few days. This town was included on the visit because Mary apparently lived here for the final years of her life. Mary faced difficult challenges. There were those who tried to silence her, and the message she strongly knew that she was to share. While I was on this pilgrimage, I had the experience of someone trying to silence me every day I was there. Through this difficult situation, I found my voice in France as I spoke up for myself. It was important for me to say out loud, I will not be silenced. I'm now feeling grateful for the unexpected growth I experienced with this situation. Living free is to cherish that this is who you are, according to author Gregory Boyle. Mystic Hildegard of Bingen wrote this, quote, dare to declare who you are. It is not far from the shores of silence to the boundaries of speech. The path is not long, but the way is deep. You must not only walk there, you must be prepared to leap. End quote. The next slide, please. So we began this part of the journey with a beautiful sunrise here over the mountain, just behind where we were staying, to begin a new day. This image was outside my bedroom window. We hiked up the mountain to see the Chapel du Saint-Pilan and visit the Grotto di Sainte Mary Magdalene, there within the walls of this mountain. On the way up, there was a natural spring water source coming out of the side of the mountain. We and many stopped there to bless ourselves, and some to have a drink. At the top of the mountain is a very small Chapel du Saint-Pilan. It is locked except for certain feast days around the Catholic Church. Next slide. And the next slide, that's the chapel at the top. This is the inside of that chapel. We were encouraged to sing through the bars of the locked door and into the chapel space. Oh my goodness, the acoustics there. The next video, please. There were over 16,500 challenging steps, or 8.25 miles of round-trip walking for us that day. We experienced lunch under a tree at the top. The next slide, please. Absolutely breathtaking views all around once you reach the top and peek out over the walls around the grotto. I could feel quite an energy shift as we began our walk back down. And next slide. Walking into the Grotto di Sainte Mary Magdalene was quite a sight. This is it here. This was the large cave, we are told, where Mary Magdalene lived for a time. It was originally made into a sanctuary in the 8th century. Next slide. The next day brought a visit to the Basilica Sainte Marie Magdalene in Vézelay, built between 1120 and 1150. Within this church, we are told, is the relic of Mary Magdalene's skull. I've never been someone to have really been drawn to the practice of keeping such relics, but it is definitely a thing there. As I made my way to her skull, I found myself silently talking to this Mary. I could somehow feel her there with me as I felt the tears behind my eyes. I did feel very close to her in that moment. I love her strength, resilience, and unwavering faith. So many attempts to try and silence her. I thanked her for who she is and how she helps love and support us. The next slide. Another day brought one final stop to the grotto worship cave space of Mary Magdalene. I wanted to make sure I had some good, though brief, time in silence with our last visit there. It was powerful and did not disappoint. During this silence, a group of 8 women from Portugal appeared. They made their way to the main worship altar, joined hands, and began singing. The combination of the sound of the singing and the acoustics there absolutely carried me away. It felt like the energy shifted higher as the song echoed through the cave. I closed my eyes and felt God near. These women made their way to each of the 4 main worship areas within this part of the cave, each time singing a different song, each time carrying me away. Oh, the gratitude I felt. Next video, please. This is a video. It's supposed to be of them singing. And then the next. In 4 of the church locations throughout this trip, I felt a nudge to light a candle for particular prayer intentions. It is a powerful practice in worship spaces there and at some churches back home. An important part of the culture in France is to have a picnic with family or friends. It was wonderful to have the opportunity to experience this a few times while we were there together. We experienced a picnic at the top of the mountain in Saint-Baume under a tree. Next slide, please. And the next slide. Our final location was to Sainte Marie de la Mer near the Mediterranean Sea. One of the largest churches I had seen yet was the Basilica Sancti Trofimi Ecclesia. History has been preserved so well in France, and it doesn't take long to feel a peaceful presence in these sacred spaces. Also, it was wonderful to see that many bring their dogs to most places that they visit here in France, including when they go out to eat. Next slide. It's a very windy day that day I took that picture. Fleeing persecution in Palestine in the year 45, the legend says Mary of Jacob, Mary Salome, and Mary Magdalene miraculously landed on the shores there on the Mediterranean Sea. Their arrival is believed to have heralded the beginning of the Christian faith throughout Gaul. Some believe Sarah may have been with them for this journey. Others say she met them there. One thing that you will see frequently in this town is the Kalhage cross, which is one symbol associated to Mary Magdalene. The next. The cross is for faith, the anchor for hope, and the heart for love. These are the symbols of the guardians, fishermen, and Holy Marys of the Camargue. This is a region in southeastern France, characterized by numerous shallow salt lagoons. The region is known for its white horses and as a nature reserve for birds. The next slide, please. Our final worship space stop there was the Église Saint des Saint Maries Church, built between the 9th and 12th centuries. I visited the crypt with a black Madonna named Sarah, who is the patron saint of travelers. It was a quiet, sacred space with many people and not really any talking, just reverent silence. We made our way to a rooftop view of this church by an outside entrance winding staircase. It is quite the peaceful view near the Mediterranean Sea. And the next slide. This was a significant area for Mary Magdalene. Her name, including some streets, her image, the Camargue cross, were seen everywhere here. And the next. We made the nearby drive to the Mediterranean Sea for a short visit as it was windy and cool. We are told that Mary baptized others in this sea as well. After our last street cafe dinner, we walked to the car with the moon shining brightly next to the final church we had visited that afternoon. And one more slide. I experienced many waves of anxiety throughout this trip. I worked through getting myself there without a travel companion for support. During some moments while I was there, and as I made my way back home, I lost count of how many times I asked God, Jesus, and Mary Magdalene for help. I'm doing my best to try and learn to trust more now. It is in the effort to trust as best as you can that feeling freer may begin to emerge more often. Megan Watterson has created a deck of cards around Mary Magdalene. We were asked to choose a card daily on the days we were in Saint-Baume. These 3 cards emerged for me with the most important messages. The first one was freedom. I am called here to be free. The second, the breath. I reclaim my soul. The third, the soul. I am free. There were many reminders throughout this trip to live as freely as possible. And that is the message I hold next to my heart tenderly. It could not have been clearer. On our final day, we all saw a red dragonfly. The spiritual meaning of a red dragonfly is live life to the fullest, self-love, embracing your own personal power, ability to adapt to change, and become your true self through transformation. I am more grateful than I could ever express for the opportunity to take this once-in-a-lifetime trip around Mary Magdalene. I've grown to love Mary more. I feel closer to her, Jesus, and to God. Somehow, I no longer feel the same. It feels as if I'm seeing through a different lens. In closing, I offer these words of the Magdalene's Blessing by Jan Richardson. You hardly imagine standing here. Everything you ever loved suddenly returned to you, looking you in the eye and calling your name. And now you do not know how to abide this ache in the center of your chest, where a door slams shut and swings open at the same time. Turning on the hinge of your aching and hopeful heart. I tell you, this is not a banishment from the garden. This is an invitation, a choice, a threshold, a gate. This is your life calling to you from a place you could never have dreamed. But now that you have glimpsed its edge, you cannot imagine choosing any other way. So let the tears come as anointing, as consecration, and then let them go. Let this blessing gather itself around you. Let it give you what you will need for this journey. You will not remember the words. They do not matter. All you need to remember is how it sounded when you stood in the place of death and heard the living call your name. Thank you for your love and your prayers and support.